Hello and welcome to Pods Like Us. I'm Martin Quibell, known to my friends as Marv. Now I've got a written script as an intro for a change. This time I'm speaking with a writer, producer, author, and a former BBC foreign correspondent. My guest wrote the fabulous book, The Optician of Lampedusa, or is it Lampedusa? I don't know how it's pronounced.
Producer.
Lampedusa, which is based on the true story of over 350 people that were saved when a man, his wife, and friends discovered survivors floating in the sea. It's a fantastic book. People really need to read it, I think. And dare I say, it reminds me actually of Hemingway's The Pearl in some ways, just in the way that the story has that native feel. You can get the feel of who the people are and the whole culture therein through the book, and almost the way that you write the prose as well in there. But
Thank
anyway,
you. I think every writer dreams to be of being compared to Hemingway, so that's I can die happy now. Thank you.
my guest has also written the limited series audio docudramas about written them about other amazing true stories. The previous series, The Butterfly King, looked at the true story of King Boris III of Bulgaria, who died soon after in questionable, yes, after meeting with Hitler and saying no to handing over a number of Jews to the Nazi Party. The latest project that my guest has written and produced for Blanchard House is the exciting docudrama A Most Audacious Heist, that is about the man who stole the last of the 27 Sisi Stars. My guest is the incredibly talented Emma Jane Kirby. Hey Emma, thanks for speaking today.
It's very nice to talk to you. Thank you for having me.
And I'm going to call you EJ throughout the rest of the discussion, which is, that'll be, yeah, if that's okay. Yep.
Perfect. Everybody calls me EJ. Emma Jane's a bit long. People can't be bothered with it.
So, going from foreign correspondent for the BBC Radio 4 to writing and production, what was that transition like? Because I know that you started writing and producing docudramas while still working for BBC Radio 4 as well. So what was that transition like?
That's right. I mean, I worked in news for a good part of 25, 30 years, really. And I loved it. And I was in a different country 2 or 3 times a week. I was going to every big news event, and it's addictive and it's fantastic. But you don't get that chance to sit back and think too deeply and really, really go deep into a subject. And it probably won't surprise you that the thing I like to do most at the BBC was not the 10 o'clock news or 6 o'clock news or as a foreign correspondent. It was actually writing From Our Own Correspondent, because that was where you could write a little bit differently, and also writing for the online, for doing in-depth analysis, because you could really get into a subject. So I realized when I came back from being a foreign correspondent that I came back in about 2010, 2011, I think, and I wanted to do more stuff like that. So I joined Radio 4's World at 1 PM and Broadcasting House. And I started to do some stuff for Broadcasting House about Orwell and poverty and down. I was basically looking at down and out in Paris and London 80 years on, things like that. And all these kind of stories just resonated with me, talking to real people and spending a lot of time with them. And then I was doing stuff like I would follow a school. I followed an amazing school called Belfield Junior School for a year. And I really got into telling a story of a whole community, if you like. And then I was on the migration trail for a very long time. And the story that you spoke about in your introduction, my book, The Optician of Lampedusa, that was a story which really resonated with me because people were switching off from looking at migration stories. People would say, "Oh, I've heard that. I've heard about rubber boats overturning, flipping over." And migrants were just becoming one big mass that, oh, it's just a number. And this was a way really to draw us around and say, okay, let's change the focus. Let's put the focus on the people of Lampedusa, an island where migrants came to, and see if we could draw people back to this story, which is one of the most important stories of our age, of course, migration, mass migration, people seeking refuge from war or from persecution. And it worked. And so I originally wrote a small, I did a sort of little series of pieces, and The Optician was one of them. And then I decided, no, this could really tell a longer story. So I told his whole story in a book. And again, it was just something which I absolutely loved doing. I found another fantastic story that my neighbor just told me about a man who stole a plane, and he was very homesick and he tried to fly home. And I started investigating that story for PM and thought, wow, this is an amazing story. And that turned into a play. I started writing a play. And when I decided, okay, it's time to hang up my reporting boots and flak jacket forever, I joined the Archers.
Yep.
And I was a storyliner for the Archers, which was fantastic, moving from fact to fiction. And it's that lovely blur, I think, which has really got me into writing podcasts, that blend of fact and fiction, of storytelling, and that creativity that you can't really do too much of in news. It's a very long answer, isn't it, Marv? I should shut up now.
No, that's fine. That's great. And also the Archers. Is it as comfortable to be in the writer's room of the Archers as it is to listen to the Archers?
Oh, so much better. So much better. I wrote the recipe, if you like, as the storyline. I was also script editor. So what I was doing was writing the recipes. I didn't write the actual episode. We have a team of fantastic writers who write the Archers and who turn the recipe into something fantastic, generally, 5-star drama. I love the Archers. I've been a fan all my life, but it was brilliant. And I learned so much from those writers and from the chief storyliner, a guy called Dave Payne, and from the editor, who's a fantastic chap called Jeremy Howe, who used to be head of Radio 4's drama. So I learned so much. And I think that's what keeps me going in all this writing stuff, is you continue to learn. You continue to learn how to write different formats, different ways. And with this podcast, in the world of podcasting now, it's a very different style. It's a very different way of writing. And it's brilliant. You're just learning all the time, inventing and creating.
But it's interesting because your work with the Archers and going into fiction has
It's real. It's real. Come on, Ambridge is real.
It's real. It's
a
real.
real place. It's in Borsetshire.
Okay. I was just going to say that doing that informs the work that you do telling these true stories now as well, because when you're looking at writing those, I'm listening to these shows and I can hear that you're adding the sense of drama that you get from the fiction. You're adding that to pace the story of this true story that you're trying to tell with the Butterfly King and now with the Most Audacious Heist. There's that element of drama in there to pull the listener in a sense.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That's what you have to do with podcasts, with these narrative podcasts. It's a blend, isn't it, of drama. And of course, these are real stories. What you're listening to is true. Although in the current one, with The Most Audacious Heist, part of the fun really is that this is about two characters who have legendary, mythical status and who create their own myths and their own legends. And part of your work as a listener is to pick through the fact and the fable and the fact from the fiction. But yeah, it's a wonderful medium. I really, really enjoy it for exactly as you've said, that blend of documentary, of drama, pace, And it's almost like murder mystery writing. You've got to find that hook. You've got to find that that whodunit, even though this isn't a murder story that we're talking about now. These good chapter endings, these what's going to hook us in next. And although that sounds contrived, to be honest, they came really naturally when I was writing this because they were all the questions I wanted answered. But hang on, what happens now? How did what? It's that great sense, and it's really fun. It's a really fun medium.
But also it's interesting as well that so I know Rosie Pye. Okay. So and she has this incredible opinion where she says that each show needs to have a different feel in a way. So she likes shows that have a different approach each time or have a different thing that pulls the person in. So when you did the Butterfly King, you were telling the story of Boris, of King Boris III. But with this, you're telling the stories of the two people who were Elizabeth with the Sisi Stars back in there in her life, and you're also telling the life of Daniel Blanchard, who incidentally has nothing at all to do with Blanchard House, by the way, if people are listening. Completely different, and as the incredible Saran Jones says in the narrative, that's just a fluke in a sense that they've got the same surname. But how amazing that you've got Saran Jones there doing the voiceover. She does such a great job.
She does, doesn't she? Yes, she does. And if listeners are interested in her narration, they can also hear her on another of our shows called Black and Blue. I don't know if you've heard that one yet. Also a very good one, but very, very different one, much more newsy, telling the stories of the police force and what it means to be black in the police force in the US. And I think you're absolutely right. Every show has to have a different feel. And to me, what makes a show a good show, for me, I can't really write about any. I'm not really interested unless there are good characters.
Mhm.
And King Boris III of Bulgaria, you hear Bulgaria, most people don't even remember which side it was on in the war. It was just a tiny little player. It was a tiny little player, but it was became very, very important because where it was sandwiched between geographically, it was stuck in the middle. And King Boris, you realized as I started researching, what a man. I mean,
Mm.
just a fascinating player, a political player, shrewd man. And we spoke to his children, King Simeon and Princess Maria Louisa, and you realize that he was an amazing father as well. So you've got the human part of him and this rude political player at the same time. And with A Most Audacious Heist, what's such fun is that you have two, it seems, totally disparate characters, totally different. One's a queen of Hungary and empress of Austria, and the other's a very poorly born jewel thief. But actually, their fates are secured together by these stars. One gets the stars. I have to check my dates. I think it's 1865. Elizabeth is given these 27 glittering diamond stars for her 27th birthday. And 100 years after her death, Daniel acquires them, not as a birthday gift, but as a gift he awards himself while on his honeymoon, i.e., he steals them. But what is fantastic about this story for me is that they're so different. You just looked at them separately without the Sisi Star, you'd think they have nothing in common. And yet they are so similar, aren't they, in
Mm.
character? They're just incredibly driven, ambitious, clever, conniving.
Yeah.
They know what they want. They're going to get it. Their determination is second to nothing. And they both create these wonderful myths about themselves and live up to them.
You actually, I mean, without wanting to give too much away, you actually there's a certain point in the narrative where there's an epiphanal moment for Elizabeth where she's at this party and she's getting all of this interest from people and and then she has this epiphany that that's where her place is in the world. at that point, and you get epiphanal moments from both of them. You get one with Daniel as well, or you get them in certain bits with Daniel, but it's weird because, like you said, there shouldn't really be any similarity to the two of them at all. But they both have this sort of thing where they realize both of them, this is what my life is. And I mean, Daniel, the way that he gets the stars, it's almost Tom Cruise style.
James Bond, isn't it?
Hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yet, as soon as they both have these stars in their hand, they realize that they're both powerful people, or they
Yeah.
can be, that there is magic, if you like, in the stars that they're holding and in themselves. They've just got to find a way of becoming the people they want to be. And if they want to be that person, they can do it. But of course, there's a danger. If we start to believe in our own myths, we know that that's when things start to unravel. That you think of that Robert Browning quote, "A man's reach should exceed his grasp." Or what's a heaven for? Problem is, you exceed the grasp and you keep on and you keep on and you keep on. There's going to be a fall at some point. What I should say, because you won't have got there yet, Marvin, unless you've been given all the episodes in advance.
I wish.
We're now currently at four, I think, or five, four, I think. Do keep listening for listeners because there is something that listeners really may be able to help solve. There
Okay.
is some mystery in this podcast which we really, really, really do need listeners to help. And you will hear a plea for that as we go towards the end of the series. And it could be that somebody just very innocently knows something or has seen something that really could help solve a mystery of 100+ years.
Cool. That's great. So, why choose the audio medium specifically?
I worked in TV for a number of years as well, but you'll know that TV is I mean it's fantastic, and sometimes the visual medium is just you think of a film and you think, would that have been quite as powerful if I didn't see those images, or if you didn't think of something like the Ethiopian famine that
Yeah.
launched Band-Aid, etc. If we hadn't seen those images, would that have had such an impact? There are certain times, obviously, when television and film and the visual medium just are they're second to none. But I just feel with things like news, although I loved working in TV, you can only tell the story with the pictures you've got. If you're going to in that good old local radio, and I started off in local radio, and I still stand by local radio. It's a great medium. And in local television, if you were telling the story, here's the old joke about local radio, but about a cat stuck up a tree.
Yeah.
In radio, you could tell that story 100 different ways. You didn't need the cat. You could just explain what it was like standing watching that cat, and you might be able to record it mew or something. But even if you couldn't, you record the wind, and you can tell what it was like with all the fire crews around trying to rescue that. If you haven't got the pictures of that cat stuck up a tree for television, you can't tell that story. You've got to have those pictures. So for me, often television and the visual medium is quite limited in what you can tell. But for radio, it's like reading a book, isn't it? It's radio and the audio medium. It's imaginative. It's much more imaginative. It asks the listener to give more, I think, as well. And yes, of course, I love listening to podcasts or audiobooks while I'm cooking. I can be doing other things, whereas I can't really be doing that if I'm sitting down watching a film. It needs all my attention. But it still, I think, demands more from a listener. You have to engage and you have to imagine and you have to put yourself. That's what I love. That's why I'm a huge reader, and I think I love it for that. That it makes me engage and imagine, and I can be transported into another world, a bit like the Archers.
It's almost more interactive in a
Definitely,
sense because
that's the word.
as the listener, you become a part of the actual narrative, the story itself. And when it's something that you are interested in, you become more involved in it.
I think that's spot on. I think that's absolutely right. And hopefully, with A Most Audacious Heist, listeners will really find some empathy with the characters, and will Daniel's a baddie in a sense because he's a thief, right? He's a man who performs some incredible heists. But when you hear about his background and when you hear why he's doing this and what he does, I think it's very difficult not to like Daniel and not to admire him. He's a man, I
Mm.
should say, who doesn't believe in violence. He's not a stick 'em up and shoot 'em sort of thief. He does not engage in violence. And we all like somebody who's clever and cunning and gets away with it, who we can't help, even though we know it's against the law and we're not going to do it ourselves. There is always that sort of love for somebody who manages to outsmart the authorities, the Robin Hood, as it were.
Yeah.
And that's Daniel. And I think with Sisi, I don't know how you felt, Marv, listening, but for me, she was such a prototype of Princess Diana. The whole
Yeah.
time I was researching Empress Sisi, I kept thinking of Diana. Whether you're a Diana fan or not, I think nobody can have tugging of the heartstrings when they remember that first photograph of her in her standing in her kindergarten with the slightly see-through skirt. Do you remember looking really quite embarrassed, and she was about to become Prince Charles's wife, and she was just the girl next door look. She wasn't high nobility. She hadn't been highfalutin with royalty all her life. Of course, she was royal, but she was kept away. She did an ordinary person's job that we could all relate to. And that's very much Empress Sisi. She didn't work, but she was very young like Diana when she married, and she married the most powerful man in Europe. And suddenly, this little girl, Empress Sisi, who was just old, or Empress Elizabeth, who was just Sisi back home in Bavaria, who was riding bareback with her brothers and swimming in the lake and going to the circus with her dad and mucking around. Suddenly, she's catapulted into front the front of the stage, the world stage, and she has to measure up, and she's found wanting, and in the same way that Diana does. And I think you'll trace through that the sort of spiraling of Princess Diana as well. And it gives you quite a pang, I think, when you think, that poor old Sisi, she married at 15. She married at 15, or she married at 16. She was proposed to and accepted the proposal at 15. But this was the world at the time. They had to actually wait until she started her periods until they could actually get married. That's how young she was. The Empress put a swing in the garden. The Emperor, sorry, her husband, put a swing in the garden to cheer her up. She was a child. And suddenly she's thrust into this position. And just like we saw poor old Diana with eating disorders, keep listening, and I'd love to know what your listeners, whether they can also see Diana in her.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I see the initial almost naivety of the two of them, where they didn't realize what they were letting themselves in for with all of the interest from outside sources. And also in both cases, you've got people in the royal family who are questioning what they're doing and trying to explain to them, this is how you should be doing this, not this way. And
Yeah,
there's a lot of similarity there between them for sure.
definitely. Definitely, definitely. And there's one thing which I think we do talk about in the podcast, but I don't think it matters to tell you this, but it's not a big plot line. But if you Google Empress Sisi and then put paparazzi, you will find that she was the first victim of the paparazzi. And we think, what? That's the 19th century. That's Victorian times. Of course, she was a contemporary of Queen Victoria, who, by the way, thought her own daughter Vicky was much prettier. But you think they weren't really pressed like that. And you have a look, and there is a photograph of her with a fan in front of her face, hiding her face while on horseback, because they were coming to her. And of course, you think of Jane Austen novels, they were full of gossip, and they were gossip magazines and gossip newspapers, and the press was still there. It was already hounding. So again, for me, that was another link between the two of them, and two utterly beautiful women.
So when you were looking into starting this show, A Most Audacious Heist, I'd love to go into even more detail on other things, but we can't keep people for 3, 4, 5 hours about all these different projects that you've done. But so, what did you do to research the case then to prepare for writing the
So
script?
the first thing was, I should say, we learned about the story from a wonderful book for a writer called Jennifer Bowers Bainey. And she's a journalist who had interviewed Daniel, and she had also done a history degree. She's a historian, and she just loved the story. So I read her book. And then I started to, and she's in the show, she's a great speaker. You'll like Jennifer. And then I started to research myself, and I had other questions. And then I found something out, which you will find out later, a couple of big lines, and thought, crikey, I've got to go to Austria here. So I went to Austria and started doing various interviews with journalists and specialists, and you'll hear them as they come out. And Daniel's lawyer, who was fantastic. I love his voice. I don't know if you've come across him yet. I could listen to him read a telephone book. He's just got one of those wonderful Canadian voices, just wonderful. And so that's the great thing about research. You find one little nugget of information, and suddenly you realize, crikey, there are whole new chapters here to do, and there are four things that we didn't know, which change everything and change your view. And so there are a lot of surprises coming along the way, which surprised me as well. So I'm learning with you, as it were. But I knew I wanted this to be fun. I wanted it to be a fun story. So I wanted to get the sense of fun. And we were just talking about how we all love a sort of Robin Hood figure who gets away with it. And Daniel's charming. He's charming. And Sisi's funny. And they're both clever. And so I wanted that sense of to come through the script, really. And in the end, I decided that what I would do is do it. You have your first episode, and then we go backwards, and we start chronologically working up to, hang on, how did we get here? So you'll learn about their beginnings, and then how they both went on to bigger and better and bigger and better and bigger and better things.
Researching the case then, that you started with the book and then you went to all these places. I mean, wow, Austria, beautiful country.
Yeah. And talk to the police who knew Daniel, and police who knew him as a boy, police who knew him, and let's just say he started early, and police who knew him later on in his life. And can we call it a career? I think we can call it a glittering career, a glittering illegal career. And so yes, as I say, that research just led to some fantastic discoveries, and to a discovery of something we really, really, really would like listeners to help us solve. And you don't have to be a history buff. You might just say, good grief, I know about that. My grandmother, or my friend, or I saw, or can't give much more away, but the answers could be in Britain.
There's actually one of the characters, the police officer, particularly, who, when he's mentioning Daniel, it's almost like he has this slight bit of almost respect for Daniel in a way, and it's like it's like amazed what Daniel can get away with, and it's like there is like I said, like a respect, and he's sort of like, wow, you did well to get away with that in a way.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you picked that up, because the police officer, who has the wonderful name of Randy Eddy,
Yeah.
you like to be called Randy Eddy. He really did have a respect for Daniel. And I think we all have a respect, don't we, when somebody's very good at their job, whether they're a very good potter or an artist, or they're a gardener, or whatever it is, or a podcast host. We all have great respect for somebody who's good at what they do. And Daniel was very good at being a naughty criminal. And again, I think that respect, it comes because he was careful not to hurt people, or as careful as he thought he was being, as he could be. So I've said before, he didn't believe in violence, and he loved the game of cat and mouse. He loved it. And it's the game that police play. But who's the cat and who's the mouse? And you've got to respect somebody who's cleverer than you, who outsmarts you, who outwits you. Yes, But it was that lovely sense, and I think you'll get that through the series, that the police are just head in hands. Oh, crikey. But you've got to admire the guy. I think one of the police said to me he was the most begrudging about Daniel because nobody wants to, in the police, obviously, to glorify crime. Let's be absolutely honest, what he did was illegal and all the rest of it. So we're not glorifying crime and saying that's a good thing. Off you go and do the same thing. But so he was really careful about how much praise he gave. And he was the head of Winnipeg's police department. But the highest damning with faint praise. But he said, the thing with Daniel is he's not one of those criminals you can hate forever.
Yeah.
He was charming.
It's like, yeah, it's like a real life version of, say, a Raffles or a Simon Templar, the lovable rogue.
That's right, the lovable rogue. Exactly that. Who was good to his mum, who didn't forget his family. And yeah, but coming back to that thing, who just wanted, it wasn't really more and more money, I think, so much. It was to stretch himself more and more, to become more and more daring. And that's the other thing that is so similar to Sisi. She also became very, very daring. We know that she was thought of as the most beautiful woman in the world. She was also the best horsewoman in the world. As her beauty, as we all get older, starts to fade, she thinks, okay, what else can I do? I'm going to become the best horsewoman in the world. And she did it. And again, you can't help. I mean, we might think, yeah, I'm going to do that. You go for 4 or 5 lessons and then you think, oh, it's really tiring. It's a bit cold and rainy out there. I think I'll stay home. That's most of us. We've all got gym subscriptions that we don't use and all the rest of it. But she just went for it. She wanted it. She got it. She forced herself. She made herself do it. And to believe in herself, she needed other people to believe in her.
So you've got the finished script, you've researched the case, you've got everything in place, then choosing the production team and the casting, should we say?
You mean the interviews, the interviewees?
Yeah,
So
the interviewees and the casting, yeah.
yeah, the interviewees. I really wanted some good police officers who knew Daniel. So we've talked about them, and they're all really great characters. But I think you really need a great historian. We have Jennifer Bowers-Bainey, who's Daniel and who'd interviewed Daniel. So she's also a historian. But I decided not to use her in her capacity as a historian because I had a great Austrian historian, Regina Neuhauser, who I had been looking out. She'd written a on Sisi, which is also available in English. And I have my own top favorite historian in the world, who was also, you'll remember from The Butterfly King. She's a historian who is brilliant on Eastern Europe, but her speciality is also royal history. And that's Tessa Dunlop,
Yeah.
Dr. Tessa Dunlop. And you can't be in Tessa's company for more than a minute without laughing your head off. She's got a fabulous turn of phrase, hasn't she? She does a party piece in every episode. She's terribly irreverent and she makes me die laughing. But she's my kind of historian because, of course, she's a performer. She knows how to perform and she doesn't believe in dry history. She knows every fact upside down and back to front. But she never makes history dry. She's my kind of historian because she's passionate about the footnotes of history. And that's what interests me most as well. The stuff that just normally just goes at the bottom of the page because it's not about, and then this battle was won by, but she's much more interested in what they were wearing and the horse that tripped them up and, how that battle came undone. So I love her for that. So I was delighted when she agreed to talk to us. And also we had a lot of people in Austria, the journalists don't want to talk about the theft of the Sisi Star because it was an embarrassment for the country. And I had a great journalist who, bless her, she forced herself into English because my German is rubbish. So she was fantastic and I had great fun meeting her. So you'll meet her throughout the podcast. I'm trying to think. And the absolute joy for me was going to the jewelers where the Sisi Stars were made back in 1865 and meeting the ancestors and having a chat with the ancestors of the jewelers, Cachette, who made those Sisi stars and made Sisi so famous. And they still make those stars today, by the way. There's still a huge market for them. That was just incredible. And he was a fabulous person to have to interview as well.
I can understand why they would still be making them because they are incredible things.
They are absolutely beautiful, aren't they? And of course, if you Google Sisi, Empress Sisi, and Winterhalter, the painter Winterhalter, he made her portrait in 1865 with these stars, 27 of them, through her glorious hair. And you'll see that. And you think, oh, yes, I've seen that. I've seen that somewhere. You can't go to Austria without seeing it stamped. It's either Sisi or Mozart, isn't it? Stamped on every chocolate box and matchbox. And that is the image which made her so famous. Those stars are something else, and they weren't just as hair ornaments. They were actually made so that they could be worn on a tiara, they could be worn as a pendant, they could be worn on a brooch. You could take them off one by one. You could hang them as earrings, but really as a brooch or a pendant around your neck. And they were just. But everybody wanted them. This was, remember how everybody wanted whatever Diana wore. Do you remember when Diana would suddenly wear blue? Everybody started wearing blue. Everybody had their hair cut in the same way as Diana. Everybody wanted it. And that was Sisi. She was an influencer. And we think that influencers are just very 21st century. That they weren't. Sisi was an influencer. Queen Victoria's own daughter was blown away by her. And that jewelers, once the images of that Winterhalter painting went around the world, everybody wanted one. And there was even the Shah of Persia came over to see her because he was so fascinated to see the most beautiful woman in the world. And he just stared at her and stared and stared. He begged to sit by her at dinner. And I don't think spoke to her, just stared at her because she was this influencer, and everybody wanted stars. Everybody wanted their hair done like her. Isn't that? I found that fascinating. That I've never thought really of influencers. We think social media influencers selling us, I don't know, the face cream they like, but Sisi really was an influencer. They got so many commissions, that jewelers. They couldn't cope with the number of commissions. I've seen their ledger. They have this big leather-bound ledger, this thick, and it was just star after star after star after star. Had to be quite wealthy to have one there. But he did them in silver. I couldn't afford the gold.
Cost effective.
Yeah.
So recording and editing then, how is that done?
Oh, it's always done, isn't it? With a tear rolling down your cheeks because you just wish there's so much that ends up on the cutting room floor that you think, oh, quite a lot of Tessa's swearing and ended up on the room floor. But you wish you could put all those bits in, but it's you need to be edited, right? We just to keep something sharp in writing, you need to make sure that you're editing and keeping things tight because we don't want people losing the thread. So you really have to, I think with audio editing, every clip has to count. And if it doesn't count, if it's not leading us on to something else, you've got to wave goodbye to it, pop it on the floor. I'm in another project at the moment and I'm weeping all the time and having to make brutal decisions with, I don't know, 400 or 500 hours of material. But that's the fun part. That's like taking the pen and starting to sketch. You sketch it out. You sketch where you're going. I always write what I call a series Bible. Okay. So it's a chapter breakdown, like you would do for a book. If you're writing a book, you write a chapter breakdown and you write your hooks and for each scene, and you maybe map out your scenes, and then you start to color them in. And of course, you have to be flexible. You can't be too rigid because suddenly you'll hear something that you think, crikey, I absolutely forgot that person said that. Oh, that could change things. And suddenly you're moving stuff around and occasionally it's quite hard to keep tabs on all the material and you have to be quite meticulous about what you've used, what you haven't used, what needs to be said at a certain moment so that something else will be understood at another moment. And there's also, you have to keep, because some listeners will drop in and out. So, somebody might miss an episode and may not go back to episode 2. So you have to keep reminding people where you are and thinking, if I was just joining now, would I understand what the series is and what have you? But I love the fact that although you write the recipe, it is like cooking, isn't it? You're writing, you've got a great recipe, you've got Delia Smith's recipe, and you just think, you know what, if I threw some sun-dried tomatoes in here, I'm sure it'd be nicer. And you do that and you think, it was nice at that time. And the next time you think, I'm going to throw some walnuts in as well. And that will thicken the sauce. That'll make it different. And it's a little bit like that. I think you write your original recipe, but you've got to be flexible enough to say, okay, that's not working, or, oh, I could make that even better, or I've forgotten that. That would really turn things around.
We're going on a tangent here and almost touching on something from earlier. So when you're researching, then do you come across bits that you suddenly think that would be a nice cliffhanger right
Definitely.
there? And is that
Definitely.
what you're looking for when you're looking at these stories? Is these cliffhangers, which is like that's a nice place to stop the
That's right.
episode
We call
there?
them, I've been calling them hooks, but you're
Yeah.
absolutely spot on. That is what they are. They're cliffhangers. So definitely. And in fact, going back to what we were talking about research, and there is something that I've said that listeners can help us with. That's something that I found while I was researching. And that for me, that gave me an episode that I didn't know I'd be doing. And so while we're always looking for the hooks and what have you, and I'd written my hooks and I'd written my end of series and I'd written exactly where I was going, when I found that out, it set the cat among the pigeons. And there are 2 or 3 moments where you'll find the cat is set among the pigeons. And but you're quite right. You're always looking for that cliffhanger. You're always looking for that moment that's going to go, because there are of course commercial breaks as well, that's going to make you think, oh no, I have to come back and listen to that. I'm not going to switch off yet. And the great thing is, somebody messaged me the other day saying that, and I don't know why they were doing it because it's not on the radio, of course, they could have just pressed pause, but they sat in their car and listened to the end rather than go to there. They had a coffee morning with them and they said, oh no, I had to sit in my car and just wait for that commercial break to finish so I could find out what happened. So that's the feeling that we're trying to aim for all the time, trying to hook listeners in, and cliffhangers are the other way to do that. And also, I would say that emotional connection with characters. And I always come back to that. You can have, I think that's true, isn't it, of all writing, that you can have the greatest plot in the world, but if you've got boring people doing it, or they're people that, you don't connect with in any way, you're not going to care. You're not going to care if they live or die, or if they survive, or if they save the baby or not. You've got to really empathize and connect and find something in yourself, I think, that connects with those 2 characters, that hooks you into those people so that you care about their fates. It's almost like Sisi and Daniel's stars are linked to this. Fates, rather. Sisi and Daniel's stars are linked to the same star. Their fates are aligned. And by listening to this podcast, we are too, really. We're also hooked on this same star, and we've now got to follow its trajectory.
So music and sound effects, they're done by whoever's editing the show, of course.
Our music is done by a fantastic team. We have a great team, and the show music was really largely Toby Matamong and Louis McNamel. Toby Matamong did an awful lot of it. He is an amazing musician. He's also an incredible singer. If anybody knows the Holst Singers, he's based with the Holst Singers. Absolutely incredible musician, very, very clever. And if you listen closely in episode 1, you'll hear him whistle. You'll hear him whistle as Daniel Blanchard. It's a joy to work with Toby. He's so clever. What he does is because we've got 2 stories, so of course you need 2 different types of music. You need the glittering star of the royal household, and you need that sort of sneaky, sly music of somebody who's trying to get away with something. And so he plays those together, and you'll hear them being refracted, those main themes, throughout the show. I think that's something that Blanchard House is very strong on, actually, and all our themes are terrific. Really terrific, I think. Pirate of Prague, that was, I think, one of my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
terrific one. That was Louis, who's an incredible musician. They're such a good team. And I love music, but I'm not very musical. But the great thing is I can sit with them, with Toby or Louis, and just say what I'm hoping to get here. Toby feels it very, very quickly anyway. They read the scripts and they get a feel for the characters. And Toby always says if he's connected to a character, then he can feel how the music should be. And he's one to watch, I think.
It's good that they've both got their own individual themes in a way that is sorted that out. And the show art, which I did a really bad drawing of.
I think you did a beautiful drawing. Very talented man. I think, yeah, the next Monet, I'm sure. Yeah, the show art, we give that, we are partnered for this one with Curious Cast, which is a Canadian broadcaster, and they commissioned the art. So obviously you'd have cried if the Sisi Star wasn't bang in the middle. But so they did it with something slightly James Bondish behind it. It's quite 007, I thought, isn't it? It's quite fun. It's beautiful and with the glittering star, but there's something seedy behind it. But yes, that's not my design. That's theirs. But I was very pleased with that, I must say.
Yeah, it's so James Bond that you almost expect Shirley Bassey to be singing a theme tune to it.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Sadly, she's not in this series, but there we are.
No, let's put a shout out for her, I suppose, for the future.
Absolutely.
So, what advice would you give to writers and creatives yourself?
Keep at it, because it's writing is a business that is hard to break into. Podcast industry is quite hard to break into. Journalism is hard to break into, but keep doing it. Keep writing. Keep at it, because wow, if there's a lesson from this podcast is you just keep trying at something until you get it. And if you try hard enough, wow, you can. That's, I think, Daniel's motto. That's Sisi's motto. That is the motto of A Most Audacious Heist. Keep at it. And I always say with writing, if you don't write, you just think about writing. When I get time, whatever. If you don't write, your writing muscle will just wither, just as we get flabby stomachs when we stop doing the 100 crunches that we were doing a day. Not that I do that, but people do. But if you want to be fit, you've got to go out running, and you've got to. If you don't write and you just think about writing, if you don't run, you just think about running, you're not going to get fit. If you just think about writing, and you don't do it, you're not going to progress. And you don't need to show anybody, you don't need to get it approved by anybody. If you enjoy it, great. If you enjoy it, great. And keep at it, because one day you'll find somebody who also really enjoys it. And I would just encourage everybody to take a leaf out of Sisi and Daniel's book and keep going and keep striving, because not every star is lucky, but hey.
You'll find your place.
Absolutely.
Okay. But you mentioned earlier on that you like to listen to podcasts. So what podcasts stand out to you that you really like to listen to?
So I do like to listen to podcasts. I like, just most recently, I really loved Ghost. I really loved Ghost, and I really loved The Coldest Case in Laramie.
Yeah.
So the reason I'm drawn to them is sometimes I get a bit cross with podcasts, especially true crimey podcasts where you've given it your best for 8 episodes, and then they just say, and we'll never find out. And you think, oh, hang on a minute. What have I done? You think you're getting somewhere, and they'll say, there we are, never found out. And a lot of them are like that, and I got a bit disillusioned with them. And the reason I like Ghost and the reason I like Coldest Case in Laramie is we learn something. Maybe the journey is really the narrator goes on a journey themselves, a personal journey. And on Ghost, the narrator learns, well, I can keep on pushing. I'm a journalist. I can keep on pushing, but how many doors do I break down, and who am I going to hurt if I keep pushing and breaking these doors down? Is there a moment when we all have to say, family's worth more or friendships are worth more. So I really loved that. And The Coldest Case in Laramie, I really enjoyed because that is a murder story. And the narrator hates Laramie. She hates her. She grew up there. She was unhappy. She absolutely despised the place and she hated everybody. And by the end of the podcast, she has to have a little think about things. So I really like that because I felt that there's a conclusion, a proper conclusion that satisfied me.
Yeah.
So I think it's like, otherwise I'm huge on audiobooks as well. I love listening to audiobooks, and the rest is entertainment. I listen to as well. Marina Hyde is my favorite columnist. Who could not like Richard Osman's novels? They're fantastic. Fantastic. They're the ones you wish you'd written, hey?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So how can people contact you and get in touch with you if they need to, really?
I think that would just be through the Blanchard House website.
Yeah.
If you just have a look at the Blanchard House website, and there'll be ways of getting in contact there to find out what's coming up as well with our new shows. I'm working on a big one at the moment that'll be out, not sure, probably in the summer or after the summer. And that's a really exciting project. I would have to say, I think it's probably one of the best stories I've worked on in 30 years.
Wow.
So I hope listeners will really like that one too. That's set in Asia. A lot of it's set in Asia. And what other ones do we have? We've got loads coming out this year. I'm obviously not allowed to tell you anything about them, but do keep looking at our website because there are some corkers coming up. The wonderful host of The Butterfly King, Becky Milligan's got a couple coming out. She's fantastic, with the amazing Ben Crichton, who produced. So yeah, do watch out for those ones on the website. And yeah, have a catalogue as well if you haven't listened to them. As I say, Saren's Black and Blue is up there, and Freddie is up there. Becky's a wonderful one about the dolphin. Pirate of Prague, great story. So just
Extrasensory.
Extrasensory, how could I forget? Absolutely. What a tale. There we go. There was a wonderful tale as well. That's a really good one. Reincarnation. Do you believe in it?
Yes.
Listen to Extrasensory and make up your mind. Yeah. That's
While we're talking, I'll just remind people that there will be the podcast show in London. Blanchard House aren't they having a group of people at the front of the audience or whatever, and doing a show and tell essentially for them, having a discussion about the things that they do?
That's quite possible. And I have to say, I'm sure that's true. You're probably in the know more than I am. I've just got my head down in sheafs of paper at the moment, currently writing episode 4 of the new podcast. So I may have missed that. But yeah, I know we'll be at the London podcast show. That most definitely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Come and see us.
Yes. Thank you for speaking with me today, EJ.
It's been such fun. Thank you so much. It's been really nice to chat with you.
You too. You can find Pods Like Us on any streaming platform. We are also on X, Instagram, Facebook, and Blue Sky. And you can get extra bonus footage through Patreon as well. Just look for Pods Like Us and contact us through podslikeus@gmail.com. Anyway, thank you everyone for listening, and hope you listen again to another episode of Pods Like Us.